Welcome to AHRC TV's weekly roundup. In this week's program, the Taliban launches a horrifying attack on a school full of children in Pakistan. AHRC TV interviews Asian Human Rights Commission's Director for Policy and Programme Development, Basil Fernando, as well as Sri Lanka Guardian editor Nilanta Ilangamua about the coming presidential elections in Sri Lanka. In Hong Kong, the trial of domestic helper Erwiana's abuser begins. Welcome to AHRC TV's weekly roundup. I'm Josephina Bergsten. On Tuesday morning, Taliban gunmen stormed a school in the northwestern city of Peshawar in Pakistan and proceeded to commit a massacre on the scale not seen in recent history. In the attack, 148 people, including 132 children, were killed. A further 100 people were injured. During the attack, the 7 gunmen burst into the school. They went from classroom to classroom, killing as many children as they could. This included a large auditorium where about 100 students died. The attackers blew themselves up with explosive vests when the soldiers arrived. A witness claimed that the militants set fire to a female teacher who ran up onto the auditorium stage to try to stop the massacre. Pakistani Taliban spokesman Mohammad Kursani claimed responsibility for the attack, stating that the attack was justified as revenge for the Pakistani army killing their family members, including women and children. Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has pledged to escalate the war against the terrorist group that is operating along the porous border with Afghanistan. Sri Lanka's presidential election is to be held on the 8th of January 2015. There are 19 candidates who have submitted nominations. However, there are 2 main contenders. The first is incumbent President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who represents the United People's Freedom Alliance. The second major contender is Maithripala Sirisena, the former General Secretary of the ruling party, who resigned and is now the common candidate for the opposition. Sirisena represents the New Democratic Front. The opposition has charged the incumbent with causing enormous economic hardship to workers and agricultural labourers and with suppression of trade unions. The opposition is campaigning on human rights as well. They claim that President Rajapaksa is trying to establish a dictatorship in the country and has already centralized and abused his powers in an autocratic fashion. This includes politicization of the judiciary, the police and the Attorney General's department, and the use of violence against all organized protests, which has led to a state of lawlessness. Opposition politicians have also noted that the administration under the president is the most corrupt ever. Massive financial fraud and exploitation of state resources for family benefit is common. Charges have also been made that the president's camp is responsible for attacks on the media, including the assassination of journalists, acts that have amounted to suppression of free speech and the right to assembly. The opposition has also blamed the current administration for destroying the education infrastructure and attacking the rights of university students. With regard to positive campaigning, the most prominent political promise of Maithripala Sirisena, the common candidate for the opposition, is that within 100 days of being elected, he will take steps to abolish all noxious provisions of the prevailing constitution that give absolute power to the executive president. Basil Fernando of the Asian Human Rights Commission joins us to give us more insight into what this election means in terms of Sri Lanka's political future.
Well, you see, the president has thought that it is to his advantage to have it quick. And unfortunately, you know, the law allows that. And the election turned out to be not the way that the government wanted it, because some very senior members of the ruling party, in fact the General Secretary of the party himself, has walked out and has become the common candidate for the opposition. The actual problem now is that whether the election could be held peacefully. Even yesterday night there was an attack, the burning of a stage where the meeting was to be held by the opposition candidate, and the three, according to the BBC reports, 3 people are missing. 3 young people who have been organizing the meeting are missing. And the reports from everywhere is about fear of threats. So I think the real issue for the international community should be to pressure on the government to ensure that this election is held peacefully. Well, in practical term, first is that, of course, there are sets of so many rules accepted universally now. One is that the government and everybody should be treated equal in the people who are contesting. And that is, of course, not going to happen because the government in power uses the state resources in a very big way in order to for electoral activities. So that is the first aspect of for our election. Second is, of course, the reducing or eliminating the violence issue. There's a third aspect also that has come up, whether there can be manipulations of the counting of elections, vote, things like that. So there is a general fear, that anything can be done. So to create the assurance that in fact it is going to be a fair election for everybody is a very difficult task, because the experience has not been that. See, the whole election is centered around one simple issue. That's the removal of the extraordinary powers of the president, which allows him to act undemocratically. And the opposition has promised that within 100 days they will bring about measures in the parliament to abolish some of the more obnoxious sections of the 1978 constitution, which is a prevailing constitution, and reduce the power of the president, particularly to remove the 18th amendment, which is considered by everybody as virtually paving way for absolute power. The issue whether some aspects of the executive power could be kept, which are normal, for security purposes and things like that, this is not the real issue of controversy. Issue of controversy is that the president should not be able to trample democracy, and on that the opposition is united, and many people of the government themselves are united, and if go by convictions, the president himself has vowed for this for a long time. But in the past there had been a gap between what is promised and what the people do after elections. One would wish that this particular promise given by the opposition will be fulfilled, and of course for that they need to win the election. So as an organization, we don't want to take sides of any election regarding this or that party. But on the issue of abolition of the presidential system, AHRC has been consistent for last almost 20 years. Our major issue regarding Sri Lanka has been that if a democracy is to survive, if the rule of law is going to survive, the security of the people is going to survive, an atmosphere within which other major problems of the country, like the issues of minority and things like that, is to resolve, then the executive presidential system should go. So therefore, with unequivocally we can say that from that point of view, we hope that the opposition will have a chance to make that change.
By the second week of the election campaign, there has already been widespread criticism of the government abusing state resources for the campaign, which is a direct violation of election law. This criticism has included using a large number of buses to take people to government political rallies, and daily free food at the President's Palace for over 20,000 people from various government sectors. The run-up to the election has been marked by the sharpest polarization of voters in several decades. Media organizations, university teachers' organizations, and organizations of creative artists have openly declared support for the common candidate of the opposition. However, violence is being used regularly against opposition political activists and those politicians who have openly declared allegiance to the opposition candidate. Fears have been expressed that there could be massive election fraud organized by the incumbent government. AHRC TV sits down with Nilanta Ilangamua, editor of the Sri Lanka Guardian, for more on the current situation. Welcome, Nilanta.
Thank you for having me here today.
As a journalist, what role do you play in the upcoming elections?
The role of the journalist is very important, not only in elections, but also in general as well. But unfortunately, most of independent writers depend on cyberspace, which 20% of the population in Sri Lanka has access to. But all channels of journalism, like newspapers, TV channels, and so on and so forth, are being bought by the ruling alliance, or they are under severe self-censorship.
So there appears to be many important issues in this election. What are the most important and central issues as far as the average voter is concerned?
There are so many issues, like what we are oftenly the forgot or ignoring is what has happened to the opposition politics in Sri Lanka, especially after the end of the war. And the opposition mean we have the number of the political parties, but the real opposition played by the Tamil Tigers, and it was since I would say since the mid-70s to 2009, the Tigers was the major organization or the party who played the very role of the opposition. It has been lost. None of the political parties or any other groups were able to fill this vacuum. Therefore, it was a very good chance for the president himself. And then he has to, it was the wish or bless to the implement his wish list, such as the 18th Amendment to the Constitutions and the further the distort or the further the attacks on the independence of the state institutions. People also need the kind of new political culture. So they are waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's the major issue.
Yeah. So in an interesting twist, the main opposition leader actually used to be part of the current administration. So what is the significance of that?
Having his own general secretary from the SLFE as the common opposition candidate is a significant movement, a significant the moments of the opposition. It was the actually result of one of the most smartest game played by not only the opposition parties, also this credit should go to the former president Mrs. Bandaranaike, as well as the sum of groups within the government who are exhausting with this politics and with the president and his desires.
So this presidential election appears to be one of the most polarizing in decades. How do you feel, how is the mood on the ground?
Yeah, so what we have to remind here is there is no war. So the conflict which we are facing in the last 3 decades is no longer exist in Sri Lanka. And now people are opening up, and they are started thinking about the system, and the system what they want, and the people who can help them to build up that system, and which is the most important thing in this the elections. But unfortunately, what I find is the president and his elections campaigns is is based on the old themes like patriotism and Tamil diasporas and Western conspiracy. In fact, three of his own the members in the government, including his own brothers, two brothers, are citizens of the United States of America. So the main problem is remaining still there. So we know that things are getting wrong and things are terribly wrong in the country. But who is going to free the people to make their own choice on free hand?
Thank you, Nilanta, for
Thank
that
you very
interesting perspective.
Thank you.
The trial against the former employer of Indonesian domestic helper Erwiana has begun in the district court in Hong Kong. Erwiana was allegedly tortured by her Hong Kong employer over the course of 7 months, causing her severe injuries. Erwiana has so far testified about gruesome violence, humiliation and starvation at the hands of Mrs. Lo Wan Tung. The abuse only ended when she was sent back to Indonesia, as her health had declined to the point where she could not continue to work. Erwiana spent weeks in hospital in Indonesia, emaciated and with life-threatening injuries. Lo had threatened to have Erwiana's family killed if she went to the police. Since the case of Erwiana made headlines around the world earlier this year, 2 other domestic helpers who were employed by Lo have also claimed abuse and failure to pay due salary. Lo faces 20 different charges from the 3 former helpers, including grievous bodily harm with intent, criminal intimidation, and failure to pay wages. She denies all charges, apart from failing to buy insurance. The case has helped to trigger a long overdue debate in Hong Kong for better protection against abuse for the tens of thousands of foreign domestic helpers employed in Hong Kong. That is all for this weekly roundup. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.